Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. This is my first foray into YouTube, so let's see how this goes. Today's video, we're simply going to talk about Gears of War. This is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and I played it from the very first Gears of War, and that was the first multiplayer game that I played as well. So with Gears of War E-Day coming out, I have a lot of opinions about it and just kind of how the franchise has been going. So I guess we'll start with the trilogy. So the first one, as I said, that was my first multiplayer game. That was, of course, I didn't know anything other than the first Gears at the time. It was very unique. It was very challenging, and I felt that there was an actual skill gap and something to learn from the game. It wasn't just a game that you could pick up and play. I kind of liked that you had to try, and then I later was getting into wall bouncing and just figuring out how the Gnasher works, figuring out how the Lancer works, and just how all the guns in the game work. But I came to fall in love with the first Gears of War, and a lot of people, their first baby was Halo, but mine was actually Gears. And so Gears of War 1, 2006, that was such an amazing time for me. But Gears of War 2, when that came out in 2008, I feel like the story was probably the high point for me. The multiplayer, not so much, but it was clunky, but there was still something to love about it. That was when I believe Guardian was first announced or first revealed and put into the game. But it was kind of a buggy mess. I still remember late nights with my friends playing Gears of War 2 and actually waiting for it to launch. So those were very fond memories. But the game was still trying to, in my eyes, find its footing. And it definitely found its stride by the end of its life cycle. And it was starting to blossom into something beautiful, as I like to say. And by the end of Gears 2, I was extremely pumped for what the future held. And at this point, it seemed like they were just firing off on all cylinders. So then Gears of War 3 rolls around. This is like 2011, I believe. And I specifically remember playing the beta with my good buddy, and I remember playing with the sawed-off shotgun. That was our favorite weapon to use. Of course, that was when they introduced the Retro Lancer into the game. I used that quite a bit, but the sawed-off shotgun from Gears 3 was really kind of where it was at. And of course, the Gnasher. By this time, I was really starting to pick up how the Gnasher was feeling and picking up all the mechanics of the game, so I could pose somewhat of a challenge to other players. But I decided that I was going to try and give the sawed-off shotgun a go. Unfortunately, that one never made it into Gears 4 and 5. I guess there was the overshot. I think it was the overkill, actually, that kind of acted as the sawed-off shotgun. But it was one of a kind, I will say that. With Gears 3, I believe that one had the best multiplayer. I think it was a really good ending to the trilogy with killing Queen Mira. And just kind of a lot of knots were tied up at the end there. And multiplayer, now that I'm playing Gears 5, and we'll get to talking about Gears of War Reloaded. But Gears 5, I didn't realize how much the camera shook in-game while you're roadie running. And now it's if I were to go back and play those games, it would be pretty difficult to get used to the camera shake. And you can't even turn it off. So that one was kind of a doozy going back to the older games. But that first trilogy, that it was really magical. And, part of the golden age of gaming. And then there was a little bit of a hiatus, I think from 2011 to 2013. That's when Gears of War Judgment came out. And I was excited about this one. I I was like, okay, a prequel, that could be fun. Playing as Baird, he's one of the favorites of Delta Squad. But then I found out that there were no Locust in the game. It was human versus human. And that was kind of boring for me. So, and then I think they tried to go a little more Call of Duty on this one, which didn't really make much sense. And so that one, in my eyes, marked the beginning of the downfall of Gears of War. And it just was, the cracks were starting to show. I think even People Can Fly, a new studio, were trying to help make this game. And Epic Games was kind of on their way out. And then finally, we come to Gears of War 4 after, I think it was three years, I want to say. 3 years of waiting for the next Gears of War game. Microsoft appointed the Coalition Studios to make Gears of War 4. So this is kind of a return to, or at least it was marketed as a return to form. And I know Gears of War 4 gets a lot of hate, but I think what they did with the story, trying to continue it, was the best that they could do. I mean, the Swarm were interesting enough. It was kind of a cop-out to just simply say, oh, they're just the Locust reborn, instead of trying to actually make something brand new. I'm all for fresh ideas, but you know, if you just go back and make the enemy what the first trilogy was, then okay, well, let's at least make it interesting. So Gears of War 4, I spent a lot of time playing that. It did, in a way, feel like it was coming back to the roots of what Gears of War meant and what kind of game it was. And the story, I felt, was good. The multiplayer was very smooth, very modernized for the time. This is 2016, I believe. And I thought it was a good game. You'll come to know by the end of this video that I really only think that Gears of War Judgment was a bad Gears of War game. I mean, I have some thoughts on Gears of War Reloaded, even though it's just the first game remastered again. But Gears of War Judgment, you know, they took a leap and they kind of fell flat on their face, in my eyes. So, going back to Gears of War 4, that's great story, good multiplayer. I didn't really touch on this for Gears 2 and 3, but Horde mode, I liked the feature. I liked the wave after wave of enemies, but it wasn't really my bread and butter. Multiplayer was where it was at for me. So Gears of War 4 didn't really touch much on the Horde mode, but Gears 5 rolls around, and I actually remember at the time I was working at the Cheesecake Factory, and I remember the trailer for Gears 5 come the day it came out. I was on a shift at Cheesecake, and I go outside to go watch this trailer, and I initially I had chills watching the trailer, the story trailer. I think the route that they were taking with Kate, I wasn't a huge fan of Kate as the main character, but you know, the rest of the cast, like Del and JD, I thought they were very good. I just think the writing was a little off for Kate. But again, they did the best that they could, and Gears 5 is definitely another one of those entries that gets a lot of hate, and I don't really know why. When it comes to the multiplayer, I think it's actually the most refined and most fluid, and by the end of its life cycle, it turned out to be one of the best iterations of the Gnasher. Like, as far as the spread goes, the damage output, and just where your shots were landing. I mean, of course, depending on where you're aiming, but they took some leaps with Gears 5 as well. They tried to yet again put it into a Call of Duty lens that just wasn't really fitting the Gears franchise. And so I played through Gears 5. Unfortunately, I kind of missed out on a lot of the battle passes I believe that was the first time they tried to implement a battle pass into Gears. But that came out, I think, 2019, and of course I've been playing it ever since. Had a few breaks here and there just because of other games coming out. But then there's this long gap between 2019, and now, of course, we have Gears of War Reloaded. So, Gears of War Reloaded. I think that this game is a complete mistake. I think it's a lazy remaster because we already got the Ultimate Edition of Gears of War 1, which was a remake of Gears 1 for the Xbox One. A lot of ones in that sentence. But we already had this remake. And so now they're deciding, oh, let's do a quick cash grab and let's remaster a game that we already remastered and try to paint it as a new Gears game. And I just think that's lazy. I think it's a waste of time, a waste of energy and resources that could have been put towards a Gears of War collection like everybody was asking. Because, you know, Halo got a Master Chief collection with remastered Halo 2. And they didn't really do much with Halo 3. I still think Halo 3 holds up. But they got a collection for the Master Chief. And so all of us Gears fans are wondering, well, where's the collection for Marcus and Delta Squad? We want the same treatment for a Gears of War collection. And of course, that's what everybody thought was coming. But it turns out they were just working on the first game again. And not even, I would have been okay with a Gears of War 2 or a Gears of War 3 reloaded in a sense, but they gave us one again. And by this time, they had already announced Gears of War E-Day, which, again, watching that trailer, I got chills. They're going back to what seems to be its roots again, so I'm not going to hold my breath, but I'm really hoping that Gears of War E-Day pulls in some of those old veterans from 2006 all the way up to 2011, really, and just really touches on what made Gears so unique and so powerful as a story, as a game. You know, they have to nail the multiplayer. They have to nail the story. If they mess up these characters, I actually do fear that this is Microsoft's last chance to make Gears of War great again. They're on thin ice. You know, I know a lot of people really didn't like Gears 5. I actually liked it. I think it's the best out of when it comes to fluidity and the way the Gnasher feels, I think it's the best of the series. But it gets a lot of hate, so I'm just hoping that Gears of War E-Day will finally pull in what we've all wanted since the beginning. And it's an interesting point of view. Like they're going back to the day that the Locust emerged and attacked. So I think that's a really interesting point of the story. And I hope the campaign is a decent amount of time. It's not going to be. I hope it's not finished in 3 hours. I want them to take their time with this. So if they end up delaying Gears of War E-Day, then so be it. If it means that the game's going to be better, okay, then that's what that means. But I want them to take their time with this. I want them to really polish it, and let's just get back to basics. So, anyways, guys, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I appreciate you listening to this, and we'll see what the future holds. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.